Hey, everybody. Good evening. Welcome back to a brand new edition of the Third and Lang podcast. You know what? Dare I call this a very special edition of the Third and Lang podcast? Matt Leng, can you believe we are actually going to have a special guest on our podcast tonight?
We are branching out. We are extending all of this, and we're taking big leaps and bounds. And our guest tonight is a good friend of mine, someone I've looked up to, and we'll have plenty more, over the weeks. But I think tonight's a really special night. It's kind of cool, and I think all of our listeners and followers will be really happy.
Yeah, definitely. So we will bring in our head coach, our first guest ever, Matt Leng. It's historical.
Yeah.
It's historical. So
It's good stuff.
we will let you know who that special guest is in about 4 or 5 minutes. But Matt, week 2 in the books, gearing up for a busy week 3. Just taking a quick glance at the state rankings in Class 3A, not a whole lot of changes. Hillsboro's out. They were in, I believe, at 10 last week. Lost to Pana 42-13. So actually, Peatone and Tolono Unity tied both at number 10 in the AP poll. But outside of that, Matt, not a whole lot of change as far as 3A is concerned from last week.
Yeah, I think in 3A, you look at IC Catholic, obviously, they're going to continue to grind and do the things they do. Coach over at Wilmington's doing great things. Coach Pearson over at Princeton's doing great. I think, eventually you see that Reed Custer team, they kind of flexed their muscles last year and kind of popped onto the scene and, did some things and gave Byron a tussle in the playoffs and stuff. And then, I know in our conference, taking on the likes of Athens this week. We have Williamsville next week. They continue to do great things. Prairie Central, with that first week win over Tolono Unity, continues to keep the motor running. And then, our aces down in Mount Carmel, they're doing a wonderful job down there in Southern Illinois. And so 3A, again, top to bottom, 1 to 10, really good football.
Looking at Class 2A, looking at the polls after week 2, definitely some changes in 2A towards the bottom of the AP top 10. Nashville last weekend at number 5, they are out. They lost to Freeburg 38-20 last week, so they're out of the polls. Mercer County is out. They were previously number 8. They lost to Knoxville 32-22, and Sterling Newman Central Catholic lost to Rock Ridge, Matt, 33-8. So those 3 teams out this week. In this week, North Mac is in at number 8. Rock Ridge, as we mentioned, beat Sterling Newman. They are in at number 9. And number 10 is Pana, who I mentioned had a big win last week as well. So, Matt, definitely some shakeup in Class 2A.
Yeah, up at the top, you have the usual suspects with, Coach Ramsey, Roop over there at Tri-Valley, and, Josh and Maroa. We take on a formal opponent in Athens and Coach Knox. Coach Dodd, over there at Bismarck Henning, very good. Got to tip your hat off to Ryan Hubbard, the Knoxville Blue Bullets. They did a great job of taking on that Mercer County team and establishing their physicality. Ryan does a great job. I've said all along, he's kind of one of my guys that I go to talk about power football. Wing tee, wishbone, going to smash it down your throat type of football. Knoxville has a great tradition and a great facility. You might want to keep your eyes on Rock Ridge too. Here's a Sam Graves has come back, and he has great bloodlines with his dad being a legendary coach all those years. And, Sam was in it for a while, then he kind of got out of it because of his kids. And I think, their week 1 loss to Princeton is no joke. And then, for them to beat Sterling Newman and do the things they did,
big win.
I think it just speaks volumes of them. Sam does a great job. And, North Mac, they're going to do good things. And then Vandalia, they, like I've said, they've kind of been really consistent the last few years. They have good sports programs down there, really tough with their wrestling. So, I think you think about hip flexibility and leverage and all that. And I think Vandalia is probably a team you can watch out that's going to kind of climb up the ranks as the year goes on.
All right, so if you had hip flexibility in the bingo sheet for tonight's show, you've just won. So congratulations. So, and in Class 1A, again, not a whole lot of change. The only real movement we had was Forreston. Forreston originally ranked, I believe, about maybe 4 or 5. Ended up losing to Dupec 36-26. Again, that's for now a 3A in AP. Dupec, beating a 1A in Forreston. So obviously Forreston drops a little bit, Matt, but remains in the poll. And outside of that, kind of business as usual in 1A.
Well, I think Iroquois West is a team that kind of maybe look out for. They got some hosses up front. Their offensive line is doing some good things, and then Ridgefield kind of slipped down in the polls. Now, I think the only reason maybe is just because of their narrow win over Villa Grove, but I think Villa Grove is a formidable opponent, and Ridgeview kind of starts the season off 2-0 against a DMAC team and a Villa Grove team, so watch out for them. Camp Point Central, Brad, he has that motor running really hard there. They're going to continue to do the things they do. Coach Aarons and the Alabama Crimson, Lena Winslow, their football team, they continue to just play hard-nosed football. I think Marquette would be with Coach Jobst to, watch out for them. Here's a team that, year in and year out, they continue to pile the wins up, and, they do their wing tee offense, but they just continue to play great, solid, sound football. Schematically, they're very, very sound. And then, with a coach like him that's been around a long time, watch out for Marquette.
All right, you ready? We're ready to bring in our special guest?
I'm ready, man. We're ready. Been waiting for this all day.
All right. He has been released. He has been let loose. His mic has been opened up, and we are very excited and happy to bring in the head coach and principal. And Matt, you're certainly someone that is very familiar with the principal in the principal's office. Principal and head football coach at West Central out in Biggsville, which I know Biggsville, coach, about 35, 40 miles southwest of Macomb. Pretty fair?
North.
Okay. So again,
right across the river from Burlington, Iowa, about 40 minutes to the west of Galesburg, right on the state line.
Coach, appreciate you taking time. I know it's a busy time of the year, but glad to have just a little bit of time to talk to you, and appreciate you taking time to join us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. What a great honor. Thank you. You are a legend in football in Illinois, and to get our program, to be able to talk about our program and an 8-man football, small school football in Illinois is wonderful. So thank you very much.
Well, again, You're way too kind to Matt Leng, because I know that's who you were talking about for sure. But
No.
We're thrilled to have you. And again, we made mention, and Coach, I had talked early in the year about going to the coaches convention down in January down at U of I, and sitting in on a couple of the talks with 8-man football and trying to learn more. And I'll tell you what, Coach, in a couple hour sessions, I learned probably more than I could have ever imagined about, really more than just the sport, but about 8-man and the adjustments and the importance of 8-man and why programs. And again, I'm sure this is something you can relate to. It's a huge decision on a lot of different levels. And what I found overwhelming was the coaches that had told me, look, our school did not want to lose their identity. They wanted to keep their identity, whether it was the schools that have been playing football for 80, 90, 100 years. They did not want to lose that. And Coach, it's really hard to argue that argument to begin with. So your experience with being at West Central and a couple years now, I think, what was it, the COVID shortened season? Was that maybe your first 8-man endeavor?
Yes, it was. Yeah. And I've got to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not sure if West Central still has football, if it not for 8-man. I mean, but in the conference that we were in and the people that we had to play on a regular basis, it was getting really tough to convince kids to come out. Now, I think that we've had a really nice run since we've been an 8-man, and a lot of people thought that if we would have stayed 11-man, we could have been competitive. But when you look at it, I like our first 8. I like our first 9 or 10. But, numbers 11 through 15, they just don't stack up against the people that we'd been playing against. You have to put a freshman in there. You have to put a sophomore out of position. And you just have no opportunity to compete on a weekly basis, week in, week out, with some of the people that would have been on our schedule. And even if, we played with some of those really elite teams since we've been here. I know we knocked off Mercer County a couple years ago, and that was great. But to see our kids' faces on Monday, they were beat up. They knew they had to come and play the next week. And some of the times, you didn't lose you lost to Stark County, but you lost the next week too, because of what Stark County did to you. And that was awfully difficult to continue to try to convince kids that they had an opportunity to succeed at the highest level when, they were put in a bad situation. So 8-man has done a number of things. It's given our kids confidence back. It's continued to make sure that our school had our identity, as you've already touched on. What a huge thing for small communities. Our school got to keep its identity and to continue to play football. That in and of itself has led to a great start to our school year. We're having a nice start this year. We had a great season last year. Any school that has a great start to their fall by having a good football season, I think a lot of principals would tell you that their school year starts off well as well.
Yeah. Matt, I know you've got some questions for Coach.
Well, I mean, just, Jason, when we've talked kind of privately, we've discussed some things, the ups and downs of incorporating and instilling 8-man, but why don't you just talk kind of briefly a little bit about like just the positives of kind of what it brings, and maybe some of the de-stressors it brings to your program, because, let's face it. I mean, once we kind of get in this oven, into this, this fire pit of high school football, there's a lot of stressors, and it starts, let's be quite frank. It starts after our coaching clinic. We're in football mode 365 days a year. And, what are some benefits that, 8-man kind of does, just the community to the players, and most importantly to the coaches, because these coaches, we're trying to put together an outfit out there. And I think 8-man kind of helps us with that approach.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah, I think it's started. Our people are confident that they can compete with everybody on the schedule because they feel like the teams that they're competing against are in the same boat that we are. They have about the same number of kids out for football, about the same size of school, about 200 kids. So all those things are true. But, I got to be perfectly honest with you. I'm a principal all day and I love my job. But at 3:30, I get to go out and have a good time, a great time. I just love spending that time with the kids and to get to develop those relationships and see them grow. And right now we're having a nice run, so that doesn't hurt either. Just having those relationships and building those lifelong memories, I suppose. Yeah. Just not those kids, but with the darn community as well. You see some of our older people that come to games and they're wearing their Heat gear and doing everything that they can do to make sure that our kids have everything they need. And, we just had our team meal, our Wednesday night team meal. Gosh, I tell our kids all the time, enjoy this while you're here. Enjoy, because you're never going to have this type of experience again. You're part of an organization right now that is elite, and people want to be a part of it. So they're willing to do just about anything for you, no matter how good you are in life. You're running a business or something like that. People aren't going to go out of their way just to give you stuff. They're going to, they're not going to have a meal for you on Wednesday night because they're proud of you or things along those lines. They're going to expect things from you. But, right now they get to experience things like that. And it's magical.
Hey, also too, Jason, just kind of elaborate a little bit about like the summer, because I think prepping for summer and 8-man's a little bit different. And, without going too crazy in the details, could you just kind of briefly touch on that?
Oh, certainly. First of all, I'm quite a bit different than most. I have a mentor who is a special guy that I spend a lot of time talking to, and I scratch my head a little bit when some of the things that he says, but I listen to him as well. And that's Coach Unruh from Carthage. He works with us pretty close here at West Central. And, the more I'm around Coach Unruh, the more I realize that giving kids time to be kids in the summertime helps our football program. We don't do too much in the summer. We ask the kids to come to the weight room. We don't do any 5-on-5, which is what it is in 8-man. If we do, we've done one. We want the kids to be involved in other things and be kids. And if they're together in the weight room and doing things in there, I feel pretty strong that we can teach them what we need to teach them about being a great football player in August. And by doing that, kids are excited to come to football practice because, to be perfectly honest, I haven't ran them in the ground in June and July. And, I know it goes against a lot of conventional wisdom that you got to have your OTAs and you got to have your 7-on-7s and your team camps and things like that. And that's all well and good. I understand it. But, kids being kids make them awfully excited about coming to practice on August 9th. And, they're ready to do football things after they've run up and down the basketball court a whole bunch and played 121 baseball games. They're excited to come play football.
Yeah, Coach, I tell you what, if we're ever going to learn that lesson, it would have been the past year.
Yeah, no kidding.
Where you had a football season in the spring. I think a lot of teams had a week after. They're already looking ahead to summer, getting ready for another season in the fall for football. Now that's just football. Then you've got kids that played baseball, literally went, I think, immediately football into baseball or into basketball. And you talk about, I think this year in particular, and again, from your level, maybe a little different, but I've seen it at the larger level. There was so much need for an off season this year that I think it's showing in the overall football. I think it's showing in the quality of football. You look at the teams this year compared to what I saw last year, there's a huge amount of difference. Physically, there's a huge amount of difference. I just think teams are rested. They're obviously trained and more prepared. And, I don't think we'll ever take advantage or really take for granted an off season ever again.
Well, something that you just said is crazy in terms of how much I agree with you. Our kids needed rest. They needed to get away. You said something about seeing at the bigger schools. Gosh, think about, a school of 200. All of our basketball players play football. And gosh darn, our whole baseball team plays football and basketball. Those kids or ran track, Caden Drosty, doing everything and all that stuff and going to state. It was tiring for us to watch. And I said to our track coach, one of my dear friends who's an assistant coach with us and helps, it runs our weight room. I said to him, hey, tell those kids, I don't even want to see them in the weight room for a couple of weeks. Just relax, take time off, do whatever. And,
no, you can't do that. You can't do that, Coach. Come on now. Relax.
Well, it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
It's worked out pretty well because our kids, see that, I'll be honest with you, I needed a break.
Yeah,
I did.
absolutely.
I was out of my mind. I mean, it was just nonstop. And I was just, holy cow, can you imagine what it's like for the kids running into each other, doing all that stuff? The pressure of being a kid and being in that environment.
Yeah,
I wanted them to rest.
One thing I'll add too is they're all addicted to this, and they're overstimulated, and and they're playing games and they're beat up with social media and all their social platforms that I don't think they ever really get to rest. Tim, I'll just tell you, if you can't tell in the first 5 minutes of this conversation with this guy right here, one of the things he told me a long time ago before all this, he's like, hey, Matt, he's like, I'll be honest with you, he's like, I don't want my kids to be excited about football around July, even around July, 4th of July.
Yeah.
Like, I want them to be focused and excited about football at the end of July and the first week of August. So, I mean, and I have a story to say about Coach Unruh, like I can remember when I got a VHS tape of his running fullback trap. And, he was ahead of his time back in the day, Jason, because he would always talk about those practices and always say, hey, do you guys ever just have practice from 8 to 11 in the summer? I mean, why do we even need to have these 2-a-days? He was ahead of his time way before the time was coming, so.
See, Matt, you're being dangerous because you brought back tape exchange.
I know. Yeah.
So we can do an entire podcast on tape exchange.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to do tape exchange, I'm going to start bringing up the Wednesday playoff game. Exactly. Then it's over. Then it's over. Then we're doing a 7-hour podcast. So.
Yeah, but Coach Martin at the Dairy Queen in DuQuoin. VHS tape.
Yep. Oh yeah, Coach. The stories I have heard over the years of those tape exchanges, guys driving a couple 100 miles and ended up getting freshman tape or getting, there's all kinds of legendary stories out there for sure.
Sure.
Talk about one of the things I find interesting, and I mean, first of all, it's amazing how 8-man has grown. I think we all knew it was coming. I don't think there was any doubt. How it's grown, how it's expanded, and I find it interesting how even from a geographical standpoint, it's kind of spreading in all areas. It seems like now we're seeing more like towards the south central, maybe part of the state. You're starting to see, what is it, St. Anne, I think, down in Kankakee, one of the teams. You're going to start seeing that area come through. How long before it's an IHSA sport? I think maybe with even a year, if not 2 years from now, it'll be officially sanctioned, which I don't know. Personally, I like the outlaw aspect of it just a little bit, but how long and what are the benefits, in your opinion, once the sport is IHSA sanctioned?
I think we've got a great product right now, but we work very closely with the IHSA. Sam and Craig know everything that we're doing. We stay exactly in step with the IHSA bylaws. John Lawler, since the beginning, has run this 8-man ship in a incredibly efficient way. But the fact that he has, from the very outset, said we're going to stick with every bylaw to make sure that if we get to that point where the IHSA does want to absorb it and become part of the IHSA playoffs, that there is no change in terms of what the rules or parameters that 8-man football has to follow in order to be part of the IHSA. It's clearly written in the 8-man bylaws, follow the IHSA standards. One big misnomer was if that you were an official, you didn't want to do an 8-man game because it wouldn't count towards your ratings. That's never been true. Sam clearly points out in all the officials meetings that if you do an 8-man game, you're going to get rated the same way. We just had a home game last week where we had a crew that has done a state championship game, 2 state championship games. We have a crew this week that's done state championship games at the 4A level, at the 3A level last week. These people, to be perfectly honest, want to be involved in this because it is expanding and they want to be part of it. And I think, you touched on something that's really interesting. In my free time, I love to look at the map and just kind of take the enrollment figures of the IHSA and go, maybe put a dotted circle around that school on a map. And I think I've probably got, my secretaries here laughed their rear end off because I probably have about 16 different maps that the IHSA sent out where I'm circling different things and, making, maybe a long-term plan, but, we've been, all of our 8-man meetings are at the IHSA office, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
We're very closely aligned and have spoke to them about it. It's actually been an advisory committee recommendation to absorb 8-man and for 8-man to be IHSA stamp to be part of the playoffs. The board for the IHSA then said we have more questions. We need these things to be answered and to have a definite decision or framework that we want to go with before we absorb 8-man into IHSA. And a number of those things. What's the enrollment number going to be? When will the state finals be? How many schools are going to be in the playoffs? We have a pretty good situation right now. I'd love to invite you down. Please come down and watch the state championship game on Friday night of semifinal weekend.
We've already talked. Matt and I have already talked about.
Unbelievable. It is an awesome environment. It is incredible. That place is full. People are hanging from the rafters, and you couldn't ask for a better environment for small school football to be in. It just makes you feel like, holy cow, this is it. And that's going to be tough to top. When's it going to come in? I'd say in a couple of years. But I think 8-man doesn't really explode until the stamp is on that. Yeah. I think that I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but I think that some school districts will feel the legitimacy of 8-man once it has the IHSA logo on it. I don't think that that's true. I'm very, if we're fortunate enough to play in the state finals and get handed a trophy at the end of this year, I don't. That's a trophy, and convince anyone in our community anything differently than that. But at the same time, I want Sam. I'd love Sam to hand me that trophy. I'd love Craig to hand me that trophy, or Katie. One of them. But until then, those wins still count the same to me.
So, Jason, I have a quick question. So, if it continues to grow, like, just quickly, I mean, if you had to make an answer right now, like, how do you think it would affect the Class 1A enrollment? I mean, do you think it would go up to 340? I mean, what would your initial answer be to that?
That's tough. I don't know. I haven't dove that deep. That's something that other guy in this conversation is awesome at, and I'd love to, lock him into a room and say, okay, let's figure this out to put those numbers together.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear what, I'm sure he'll talk about that. I know you'll talk about that when you get to the IHSA playoff night, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, those are things.
I think that's the main question that the IHSA is going to answer. Are they going to stay with eight playoff or eight classes and 8-man? Or is it going to be 7 classes and 8-man? Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Here's another thing that I think we all have to keep in the back of the mind, especially when it comes to IHSA and it comes to 8-man football. When I immediately saw the setup and the way 8-man was set up and how it was benefiting schools with limited numbers, I can go into the city of Chicago and I can go to these schools that are maybe 1,000, 1,500 enrollment that might get 200 freshmen out for basketball and struggle to get 20 kids out for football. You could potentially have an entire league that would be willing to start 8-man. Now, obviously, there's a lot of factors in that. There's the Chicago Public League factor, if that's something that they would want to get involved in. Believe me, I know there's a lot of parties, but that should make you think, hey, how high do you raise that enrollment number? And if you do raise that enrollment number, what kind of headaches and nightmare are you creating by that as well? Have
you done the research to look at the other states that have 8-man to know what their cutoffs are?
Not a ton, no.
Okay, well, I can tell you that Iowa's 200. There are 2 classes in Ohio and Michigan. Missouri is 200 or 220. Oklahoma and Nebraska have a couple classes. I think that if you got into that situation, I think there'd have to be like a 300 and below, and then an unlimited class.
Right.
But if that's the case, then I don't know. I don't know what direction.
I just think that's one of those issues that they really have to look at, because let's face it, they are representing their membership, and if those schools are members, that's who they have to represent as well. So I think there's a lot of different questions behind this that are going to get looked into, which fine, look into it, figure it out. You guys can figure it out, but you're right. I love your setup, the way you have it right now. I love the enrollment size as well, because let's face it, it is to keep those smaller enrollment programs, those programs that are all of a sudden those numbers start drying up. You want to keep them going. So I agree. Although, again, I just throw this out there. I do love the independence right now of 8-man football. Just a little piece of me, a little rebel in me, guys. I still like that just a little bit. For now. Matt?
I think it makes it very intriguing, and it makes it very, alluring, to other schools. And that kind of leads me to my next question I like to ask you, Jason, is that, as we talk about 8-man and small schools and small towns and identities and how it might potentially branch out to bigger areas, that's down the road with, what we're going to do with bigger schools and whatever. My question to you, Jason, is if someone to come up to you off the streets and say, what is 8-man football? Is it a speed-based game? Is it just based on speed? Like, I'm just going to get guys out there and we're just going to run around real fast on the edges because there's not as many players. It's 8 on 8. And that's my first question. Is it speed-based? And then my second question is, how do you build it? How would you build your 8-man team? Because I know, and when I ran my stuff at Fisher for Wing T, the Bible, the Jim Unruh Bible always said you would build it from your center and your guards out. So I always had my guards to be my main butt kickers, and they were my linebackers. And then I tried to get running backs, but I wanted to build it from the inside out. So when you make this whole idea about 8-man football, and someone come off the streets and say, "Tell me about this game. How do you build it? Is it speed based? What do? Do you build it from the outside in or the inside out?"
Okay, well, you don't have time for me to answer that question. I'm going to give it to you quick. Okay, so I started to feel like this was a direction that we might go. Our school board spoke to us, and we, did some research. I went over to Iowa and watched a playoff game.
In the dome?
No. I went to an early round playoff game first.
Okay.
And I got one of my assistants and said, "Hey, you're coming with me." The next day, Polo was playing. I drove up to Polo, tried to sneak in. Ted saw me. "What are you doing here, Kirby?" "Nothing, Ted. Act like you don't see me." He just looked at me and said, "You're about to fall in love with this." And I just kind of said, okay, because in my mind, I got to be honest with you, like probably 75% of the people that you think it's arena football.
Yep.
And I'm watching pregame, and I see Polo lined up in what we call double tight I, and they ran triple, and I about melted. I can run option. I'm in. Sign me up. And I'm in the stands with. I had a single note card, and I'm blasting that thing. I'm just like, holy cow! I could do this. I could do that.
Were you going Bobby Bowden on that note card, kind of like notes?
I think I still have it, and it's hilarious because I'm like, okay, I got triple, I got midline, I got double. I'm just going speedo, great play. And after the game, I'm walking off, and Ted goes, "What do you think?" I mean, they won by 40, and on their way to winning that title. And I just looked at him and I said, "Holy cow, can I run some option in this?" And he kind of chuckled. And then, of course, I did that state championship game on TV, and I just kept, in my head, holy cow, the things you can run. So, I've always been an option guy. So the fact that I could run option football, we get in a balanced set and we run option. If teams try to dictate a strength, and we have them by numbers, and we've always done that. Our guards have to be good base blockers, but, our tight ends, our tight ends are tackles. But they get to go out for a pass once in a while. And then, I suppose if somebody's more dominant than us on the inside, then we get in gun and run option out of that. But that's not who we are, and that's not what we do. Now, defensively, holy cow. We started with the back end. Most people start with the front end and move back. We started with the back end and came forward, and we used the same premise with our secondary that we did in 11-man. And, we were going to defend twins the same way we defended twins, and trips the same way we defended trips. By doing that, we could then devote everybody else to being gap responsible inside. Once you did that, it was really cool, because I took our coaches to a game, and I would do the same thing with you guys. And I would say, watch one series. We're not going to say a single word to one another. The second series, when that team came up, I said, okay, what are they going to do on second down? And one of my coaches said, well, if they get in twins, they're going to do this. And I said, timeout, stop. That's football. What are they doing down and distance wise? What are they doing in a formation? What are they doing on this aspect of the field? Game over. My coaches right then are like, holy cow, this is the same deal. So here's the difference. The width of the field, the number of kids out there. The width of the field is only 40 yards instead of 53 1/3, which in my mind is proportional. You get out there and you get in double tight and you're on the left hash, there's a lot of room over on the right hash. And we try to exploit that. There's not very much room on the left hash when you're on the left, or the left bank when you're on the left hash.
Is it a challenge to set the edge, Jason, on defense sometimes in 8-man?
No different than it is in 11. I mean,
no, I know. Hey, I know, because we got to set the edge everywhere we play at this year.
Yeah, your gaps are still your gaps.
Yeah.
We still, option wise, we still count who's number one, who's number two. You got to block then the rest of the guys. And we got 3 to year 2. That we feel that's pretty good. We still do the same thing. Numbers, angles, field. That's how we call our option. That was the same thing for 25 years when I was in 11, man. When we went to Navy and spent all those weekends with them, that's how they taught us.
Sure.
All right. So, Jason, I want to give you some softball questions before we let you go. So the first one I'm going to throw at you, ref shortage. How do you resolve it? Ready, go.
You got to have fun. You got to be willing to say we're going to play on Thursday night and we're going to be willing to play on Saturday. And if you're not willing to do that, you better be prepared for who you're going to get. And we'll play anytime. It doesn't matter. I don't like playing on Saturdays really, simply because I want our kids to have the weekend off. I want them to be able to get away from me. I want them to be able to be kids. When you play on Saturdays, they don't get to do that as much. And that's hard because it hurts the game. And to be perfectly honest, my kids like the lights. Who doesn't? Yeah. You grow up in this state saying, I want to play under the lights, man. Yeah.
How do we get younger? How do we attract a younger base to bring them in and get them involved in refereeing and staying involved in refereeing? That's the largest question of it all out there. And everyone I talk to, Jason, they all have this and that, but I haven't really heard a lot of concrete plans.
Well, there's only one way. You got to pay them.
Yeah.
You got to pay them. That's it. You got to pay them. If you paid a ditch digger a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of people are going to want to be ditch diggers, aren't they? It doesn't matter what kind of job it is if you're willing to pay them. So that's what it's going to be. You're going to have to swallow your pride a little bit and say, you know what? We're going to have to pay these people more. We're going to make less on home games, but more people are going to want to be officials, and then you're going to system will be corrected then. But until then, you're right.
Another thing I would love to see at least discussed and thrown around, and I think I know what the resolve would be, but I would love to see the various stakeholders get a little more involved, meaning college football, pro football, the levels that are benefiting from the kids that come up through the high school system, the refs that end up coming through the high school system, making it to the college level, making it to the pro level. Eventually you got to give back. And I hate to tell you college and pro, but maybe give back, and not just Illinois, maybe even from a national basis, some type of draw, some type of fund, some type of, I don't know, for a foundation, whatever you consider it. Look, this state is flat busted already. We know the story, and I don't even want to go down that road. But if you're looking for an alternative source, I think that's something that I think it is at least something that should be explored.
That's an interesting idea. Hey, I did think of something, along the lines of officials. I want you to think in terms of this. I'm sitting in my office right now, and you know how hard it is to find teachers right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Why is it hard to find teachers?
No one wants to do it. Everyone's leaving, going out of state, and yeah.
Other things to do, more of their jobs. Yeah. They're not getting paid. They're overworked.
They can make more money and do less work doing something else.
Yeah. And it's funny, 5 to 7 years ago, that wasn't the case.
10.
I remember my daughter when she was getting ready to go into college. Several teachers on my wife's side of the family almost talked her out of going into education. These are 20-plus year teachers at the time. Said, don't do it. Stay away. And now look, 5-7 years later, there's an incredible amount of demand.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
snap your fingers. You can get
Good times. Maybe we can resolve some other major issues while we're here. Unbelievable. Matt, you got anything else here for Coach?
Well, yes, I do.
Fire away.
I do want to talk about something here, sir. And Coach Kirby, you about 3 minutes ago, you said you gave us a little story about how you told your guys to watch a series of plays and then another series of plays, and you said football, that's football. Well, last night I was watching a news piece of a guy by the name of Patrick Elder, and he is quoted as saying, ball is ball. It's all about blocking and it's all about tackling. would you like to just kind of address this game that's going to be happening coming here in week 3 between you guys? Because I think this is a really neat storyline there, Edgy Tim. And these are 2 guys, Pat Elder and John Elder.
Yep.
Got me involved in coaching, introduced me to a short little math teacher out of Colfax Ridge by the name of Coley Welder. One of my first coaching clinics I went to, John Elder told me that I needed to know and learn a little bit more from this guy named Jason Kirby that was an up-and-comer. Pat Elder was my roommate here at Illinois State University. And there's a big game this Friday night at your high school, Mr. Jason Kirby. And I'd like for you to kind of talk about that a little bit. Do we have time for that, Mr.
Yes,
Edgytown?
fire away.
Yeah, Elds and I go way back. We go way back.
This is a big game, Jason. So let's talk about this.
A dear friend. He and his family have put me in rooms with people to be able to learn football that I wouldn't have been in if it was not for them. Patrick Elder is for sure Illinois High School Hall of Fame football coach. His dad is on the Mount Rushmore of high school football. What a wonderful family. That to be perfectly honest, I went and watched Eld's team play last Thursday night and sat in the end zone at Cambridge with the Elder family. It was awesome. I was scouting, don't get me wrong, mentally, but at the same time, I was having a great time visiting with an incredible family. Elds and I at one point were the 2 youngest head coaches in Illinois. And I remember there was a picture on the front page of the State Journal Register of the 2 of us. And I saw that article in Elds' house a couple weeks ago when he and I went golfing together. And I really didn't think that I would have as much angst about this football game this Friday night as I do. But it's caused me some sleepless nights. That son of a gun's got him turned around and rolling, and we got our hands full this week, and it's going to be a great football game. He's
they're 2-0. They're 2-0. You're 2-0. They've scored 60 points a game. I don't know, 55 points a game. You guys have done the same thing. I mean, we have 2 freight trains coming at each other. I mean, this is great. I mean, I'm like pumped up and excited.
It's going to be a fast game because all the passing that's going to get done in this game is going to be in pregame.
Love it.
Both of us will probably throw more passes in pregame than our teams will in the course of the game. But they're good. They are, and they do what Elder does. Man, they run the wing tee. It's an 8-man version of it, and I was scratching my darn head all summer trying to figure out what he was doing and where he was going to learn and how he'd do things. And I clicked on that film. Doggone it. It must have been Friday night, week 1, 11 o'clock. I click on that film just because I wanted to see what they were doing. And I think I got sick to my stomach right at that point, knowing, I got to defend this doggone thing again. So yeah, it'll be a special night. One thing that both Elder and I realize is it's about the kids. It's not about us. People like you understand that we've done this, and, the Coach Association guys have been texting us and writing us endlessly about this game, but it's about our kids. And both of us realize that. And our kids that are out between the white lines don't know anything about Elds and I relationship. So, that's all the better for us as well, that it's going to be about the kids.
Yeah, well, you guys are great teachers and great coaches, and you're a great you're a great leader. The building boss of a small school now. Jason, and I wish you the best of luck, and I think it's going to be great. And I'm happy for both you guys because you guys both have had an impact on my coaching career. And and I know in John Elder, when I was getting ready to have my second baby, and my wife at the time was 8 months pregnant, and John Elder's calling me with his raspy voice and asked me if I want to coach in the Shriners game. And Matt, I need you to coach. I need you to, when the Godfather talks, you do what he tells you to do. When he asked me to be a Class 1A representative, and do all that stuff. I mean, you do what he tells you to do. You don't tell John Elder no. And so the Elder family has been important to me, and you've been important. And I just think it's great what's going to happen Friday night. And I tip my hat off to you.
Thank you.
No doubt about it. Coach, totally appreciate you taking time. I'm glad we did this. This will not be the last time. We will get together and we'll check in with you during the season. But again, anything I could ever do from my end, you just let me know. Always glad to help. And Matt, we've already put it out there. I put it out there during the coaches clinic that I'll be at that state title game. So I'm in. I'm definitely going to be there.
Well,
no doubt about it.
I think this was a good start tonight to this. What do you think? I mean, did I tell you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I'm a dad, so I have selective hearing. So I hear some things you say and other things I completely ignore you. It's a skill, Coach, right? You'll tell them it's a skill. You have it.
Well, I knew once we got Mr. Kirby on here that we would blitz through 45 minutes just like that, and we did that very effortlessly.
No doubt about it. Coach, best of luck again. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and
good luck. Good luck,
Jason. Friday.
Thank you.
All right. We appreciate Coach Kirby joining us, and that's it, folks. So again, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week. This has been the Third and Lane podcast of EDGYTIM. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week.